Hello everyone and welcome. I hope you all had an amazing weekend. What a weekend it was, with some absolutely amazing news finally coming out about the very first Game of Thrones prequel. And today we got even more news, and that's right, George R. R. Martin himself opens up about the prequels, and he has a lot to talk about. Yes, this one really puts the pre and prequel, since it is not 90 years before Game of Thrones like Dr. Egg, or a few hundred years, but rather 10,000 years, assuming the oral histories of the first men are accurate, but there are maesters at the Citadel who insist it has been only half that long. We're very early in the process, of course, with the pilot order just in, so we don't have a director, or a cast, or a location, or even a title. My vote would be for The Long Night, which says it all, but I'd be surprised if that's where we end up. More than likely, HBO will want to work the phrase Game of Thrones in there somewhere, and we'll know sooner than later. So we do get some clarification, which is great, everyone. This is going to be set around the first Long Night. The Age of Heroes, The Long Night, would seemingly be a great pick for the title of the series, but George did say HBO would probably want Game of Thrones somewhere in the title. Now, it makes a lot of sense strategically. It's such an iconic title for a series, and it's pretty obvious they want to recreate the hype and cash in on the same successes that the original Game of Thrones series has had. But what's even more interesting is the fact that he is bringing up whether or not the oral histories of the first men are accurate. And this connects to the original announcement, which said, this isn't the story that you think you know. So to me, this seems to suggest that there is a twist in the story concerning the actual building of the wall, and perhaps even the origin of the White Walkers. They also mentioned the Starks of legend and the darker history of Westeros, which could create a narrative that the Starks are a big reason why the Long Night is happening again within Game of Thrones. I think most of us would agree that main characters like Arya and Jon are people that we are mostly rooting for to survive the series and have happy endings. But the Starks do worship the old gods, so giving the inception of how these cultures actually started adopting these religious systems would help fill the gaps of the greater mysteries and the history of Westeros. George also spoke very highly about Jane Goldman in his Not a Blog update. Jane Goldman will write the pilot and will serve as a showrunner if this prequel is picked up. But it does look like George is only going to serve in an advisory role, so let's hear what he has to say about that. All the news stories about the pilot being greenlit are slapping my own picture up there next to Jane's, which is very flattering, but is also a little misleading. I've consulted with all of the writers on all of these successor shows, and several of them have visited me in Santa Fe for long days of discussion, and we went back and forth in email, text, telephone, so I have definitely been involved. But really, the accolades here should go to Jane. She has been an absolute thrill to work with, and my God, what a talent. So this is very interesting. The news on Friday seemed to suggest George would be taking a bigger role, perhaps, but it is very good. He is focused on completing the Winds of Winter, and he actually got quite snippy about that. He says, and yes, before you ask, work on the Winds of Winter continues and remains my top priority. It is ridiculous to think otherwise. If I wasn't busy with Winds, don't you think I'd be scripting one or more of these pilots myself? It's not as if I've never written for TV, so he gets a bit snippy. I actually love it. I love that George said that. But all this to me is actually very positive in my personal opinion. We're going to be spoiled with Game of Thrones content, whether it's Season 8, Fire and Blood comes out, The Winds of Winter, or this prequel, The Age of Heroes, focusing on the Long Night. While they did say one of the prequels is put on shelves, the fact that they are still working hard on the other ideas and growing their Game of Thrones portfolio is really exciting. And Jane Goldman, we forgot to talk about her earlier, but she's incredibly well respected, and she's worked on Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, Futures Past, and more recently Kingsman, The Secret Service, and The Golden Circle. If you do some research on her, I've done a little bit of research. I didn't know a ton about her, but if you check out her interviews, you'll find out that she is extremely passionate about her work. She's got a great personality, very vibrant, and excited about everything that she does. So I think based on what she has worked on, she understands how the mythology and history works within a story. X-Men is a franchise with years of source material. Kick-Ass and the Kingsmen are unique in their own ways, but they have compelling characters, plot twists, interesting narratives, and I think the fact that they chose this time period within the Song of Ice and Fire is incredibly telling. I mean, who wouldn't be intrigued by the culture and mythos of the White Walkers, the Children of the Forest, and the Far East. There is a sense of genuine excitement around all this, despite how attached we've all become to the original Game of Thrones series and the Song of Ice and Fire novels. It's a great time to be a Game of Thrones fan, everyone. It looks like we're going to be occupied with new stories for the foreseeable future. But what do you think, everyone, about what George had to say? Are you excited that his main focus is on the Winds of Winter? Would you prefer him to be working on the prequels? Is the prequel something that you are really excited about, or did you really want them to cover Aegon's Conquest or Dunk and Egg? Let me know in the comment section. Leave a comment. Let me know your pros and cons about this news, and get hype in the comment section. Let's keep this going. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to show some love and hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. There's lots of new videos on the way, including a collaboration with Fill the Issues Guide this Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be here on my channel, Azora Hype, and it's going to be the Citadel of Hype podcast. Me, Secrets of the Citadel, Gemma, and Fill the Issues Guide. We're going to talk about the Age of Heroes and the Long Night. Also, a big thank you to all of the Patreon Knights on the channel. Your support has been amazing. You guys are truly the hype bringers. You will now be able to vote and decide what we will cover each week in the bonus Patreon episodes of the Citadel of Hype podcast. The poll is up right now. Links to my Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon are in the description of this video. Join the Legion of Hype. Say hi. Let's chat. Thanks for watching. Hype and love.
Hype and love.
Hype and love. Hype and love.
Hype and hype and love.
Hype and love family. We're at Game of Thrones.
Hype and love. Our family here at Dallas. Con of Thrones. Can we get a hype and love? Hype and love.